evening and welcome to another episode of Political Roundup on VOP TV. I'm your host, Sumto Ajama. The Political Roundup is your premier destination for in-depth analysis of today's most critical political issues and their profound impact on society. Join us as we navigate the complexities of the political arena with our team of seasoned analysts bringing a wealth of knowledge and expertise to the forefront. We will offer a comprehensive overview of the key topics shaping the political landscape, all in a bid to ensure that you are well prepared and equipped to engage with the day's most significant conversations. But of course, before we begin, I'm delighted to be joined by two esteemed guests. One in the studio, Mr. Peter Anosike, a distinguished development economist, best-selling author, and national analyst. And of course, we also have our virtual guest, Mr. Dele Fanimo, a seasoned journalist with over 3 decades of experience. He is not only an administrator, but also a respected political affairs commentator and social critic. All right, good evening, Mr. Anosike. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And of course, good evening to you as well, Mr. Fanimo.
Be here. Good evening.
Yes, thank you once again for joining us. All right, let's take a look at the nationwide strike by Labour, NLC, TUC. That's the first conversation for the evening. Now, as the nationwide strike organized by the organized Labour over a new minimum wage for workers continues to disrupt economic activities in Nigeria, the federal government has extended an invitation to Labour leaders for a meeting in Abuja, the nation's political capital. Currently underway, the meeting includes the president of the Nigerian Labour Congress, NLC, Joe Ajero, and his counterpart in the Trade Union Congress, TUC, Festus Osifo, among others. Representing the government are key figures such as the Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, the Minister of Information, Mohammed Idris Malagi, and Labour Minister Nkiruka Onyojocha. The nationwide strike initiated by Labour today has impacted various sectors, including businesses, airports, universities, hospitals, and power supply. Now, Wale Edwin, the Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy, has expressed that meeting the workers' demands may pose affordability challenges. He emphasized the importance of fair wages for workers, acknowledging their deserving nature. He then also suggested that given the evolving economic landscape, revisiting the wage scale more frequently than the mandated 5 years might be necessary. He underscored that while there is a legal framework for minimum wage, the current circumstances present difficulties in meeting all demands. Now, we know that today was quite a difficult day, given the fact that this nationwide strike carried along ASU, carried along power supply, carried along hospitals, banks, airports. A bunch of economic activities today were halted because of today's nationwide strike by organized Labour, NLC, and TUC. Now, my question first to you, Mr. Fanimo, would be that some people are saying that it was unfair of the Labour leaders, or organized Labour, if you please, to have involved all these other entities that affect the day-to-day, e.g. electricity, that affects homes and businesses, and airports, banks, everything I've mentioned already. So do you agree that it wasn't a fair decision for that to have happened? Or do you think that this was a ploy by the organized Labour to force the hand of the government in a bid to get the government to do their bidding, so to speak, or to accelerate the negotiations? What is your take on it? All right, we'll come back to Mr. Fanimo. Let me ask you that, Mr. Anosike.
Well, both the electricity and use that's NLC, TUC are made up of unions.
Absolutely.
So, and these unions must be involved in strike because all of them have one objective: increment of their wages. And for strike to be successful, one, NUPENG, National Union of Petroleum and Natural Gas Employees, must be involved. The National Union of Road Transport Workers should also be involved. Then, NUWAIT, National Association of Airport Employees, these organizations, one, the airport employees are to make things difficult for the big men. When they are not traveling, they'll be forced to do something. Understand me?
Absolutely.
So, all of them are part of the unions. NUI, that's National Union of Electricity Employees, is an arm of NLC.
Yes.
Banks are also arms of NLC and TUC, so they are supposed to be involved in the strike. If these key parastatals or unions are not involved, the strike will not be successful.
It won't have its full effect.
And government will not take them serious.
So you do agree that all of this is in a bid to ensure that the government realizes the seriousness of the conversation about the minimum wage?
Yes, so all of them are supposed to be involved. If not, government will not take them serious.
Absolutely. All right, thank you for your take on that. I'm coming back to you, Mr. Fanimo. My previous question was about the fact that people are complaining about all the different bodies and different associations that have joined the NLC strike or that are under the NLC, which Mr. Anosike has adequately explained, and that these additions of all these different unions, according to him, is in a bid to make the government take them seriously. But some other people are saying is in a bid to force the hand of the government to do the NLC's bidding. Now, I want to know what your thoughts on that are very quickly before we go into something else.
I tell you, myself and my good friend Peter, we have traveled this route several times, and we know the strengths and weaknesses of labor union, labor centers embarking on strike. I tell you, if there are no political undertone to strikes, strikes can't last more than 3 days. So I expect by tonight, tomorrow night, everything would have been resolved. But to your question, for me, the strike is not total. And so, the only effect we are feeling now is the aviation sector and electricity sector. And I tell you why it was strong with the electricity workers is that the current president of NLC is a member of NUI, National Union of Electricity Employee. So he was their general secretary. So there's no way they will not be totally involved in this. So, but the long and short of it is, the NLC needs to be reasonable with government, and government should also
Okay, we're currently experiencing technical challenges with Mr. Fanimo's network, and he will connect with us as soon as he can. But I'm going to continue with you, Mr. Anosike. The conversation about the meeting, several negotiations before May 31st, which was the initial deadline, and now there has been, or there is ongoing, a meeting with the government representatives, with the Secretary to the Government of the Federation. And of course, tomorrow as well, there is another meeting. And we know that from times past, sometimes these meetings do not make the headway that people are expecting. So given the fact that there is another meeting, the federal government has extended an invitation, what do you anticipate the outcome of tomorrow's meeting to be? And even this current meeting that's going on with the Secretary of the Government of the Federation, what do you think the outcome will be?
One, in negotiation, you cannot expect everything. Understand? You get some and postpone some. Because if NLC, TUC is coming with a 12-point demand,
of course,
there's no way federal government will grant that 12-point demand. So you get some and postpone some. So like Mr. Fanimo said, they should be reasonable and their demand should be realistic. I have said it over and over. That's 490 something thousand that they're asking for. No government can pay it in this country. And even if they decide that to pay it, the people will be worse off because the inflation will be over the sky. So they should be reasonable in their demand. They should demand what is realistic. Even government can say, okay, I will pay you 1 million. They will give you that, maybe they'll give you that first 1 month. In the next 8 months, you've not seen another one.
So currently, the offer from the government right now is 60,000 naira. The offer from the request rather from the organized labor has gone down from 497 to 494,000. Now, going by your logic, you're telling me this is impossible and it's even not advisable to even go ahead with this in the first place.
It is unrealistic. It is they shouldn't be joking with all these things. A government, even not accepting minimum wage is not even a problem. I can accept that I'll pay you 1 million and you not see it.
Okay.
So it's better they ask what is reasonable.
And understanding, they know that they can pay.
And the one that they know that government can pay.
Let me bring it back to you. Thank you so much, Mr. Anasike. Let me bring it back to you, Mr. Fanimo. I was asking about the current meeting with the Secretary of the Government of the Federation and other government representatives, as well as the meeting to be had with the government tomorrow through the National Salaries, Wages and Income Commission. So my question now is, what do you anticipate the outcome of tomorrow's meeting and this current meeting to be? Now, my basis for asking that question, coming again off the heels of what Mr. Anasike has said about the 60,000, about the 494,000, pardon me, being unrealistic and being predicted to cause inflation challenges and affordability challenges, than the offer from the government right now at 60,000 naira. What do you think that the outcome of tomorrow's meeting would be, and how do you think it will affect the eventual outcome of these negotiations?
You see, for me, this negotiation is very, very dicey, given the current state of the economy. Two, it could even polarize NLC the more and TUC. Why am I saying this? NLC is negotiating with federal government now. There has not been any state governor on the seat or their representative. What that tells you in principle is that whatever they come up with at the round table tonight or tomorrow is going to be binding on the federal government, not the states, not the local government, not the organized private sector, and not the informal sector. So if you are calling people for a total strike and the compensation for going on strike does not affect them positively, it will be difficult to call out another time. And as it is today, there are just 3 states that are viable in this country out of the 36 states. Every other state rely on the feeding bottle of federal government to survive. Take out Lagos, take out Rivers and Akwa Ibom. Delta cannot survive without allocation, and same for other states. There are some states that if allocation should stop today, in 3 months that state will collapse. So how do you now want to negotiate outrageous and ridiculous wage? And this wage is not going to percolate to other sector.
Okay.
So
before you continue,
Labour should be mindful. Labour should be mindful of the way they are taking this, so that at the end of the day, let me tell you, the secret people don't know, and I know that Peter and I will know this. The weakest weapon of labor is strike, if not well managed and well used. So they should also be mindful of that.
Okay. Before I ask you the next question, or before I direct this conversation to a different angle, I want to know what your thoughts on the amount that the federal government, or the amount that you think would be viable, feasible, achievable for the minimum wage. Just give me a figure. I'm sure you've thought about this.
I tell you, anything maybe between 63 and 65 should be okay.
Okay. I asked you that because Mr. Anosike has had a take on this previously, coming back to something he just said, which is the fact that the state government, yeah, you said it, the same thing as well. He has said it before, you just said it now, that the state government may not be able to pay whatever amount the federal government comes to consensus with. And his suggestion was the state government should be able to decide what they can pay their workers in their different states and let that be the individual state's minimum wage. Do you agree with that?
Definitely, that should be the case, because the IGR of each of these states are not the same. The IGR of Lagos State is about the IGR of about 18 states put together in a month. Because Lagos State today is hovering between 45 and 60 billion naira, whereas some states they don't get IGR, they don't get up to 5 billion in a month.
All right,
some
thank you
3
very
billion.
much, Mr. Fanimo. Coming back to you, Mr. Anosike, you just heard what he said, coming off of your initial suggestion. But coming from what he mentioned about the fact that state governors are not present in these meetings, why do you think that's the case? Because your suggestion seems to be something that will be feasible to a good extent for people in these different states. Or do you think that state governors do not need to be present? Or do you think that whatever resolution the federal government and the organized labor come up with would have to be enforced by the state government?
Well,
what's your take on that?
NLC should be conscious. They should be concerned why state governors are not involved in this negotiation.
Because they're not.
So it should be, they should be concerned about it, because it is the state governors that are going to pay the salaries. And you cannot enforce salaries on them, because this is a federating states.
Yes.
Understand me? So each of them is relatively independent. You cannot force a salary on a state governor. So it means there's going to be another round of negotiation.
That will include the state government.
That's after they have agreed on this. Then they have that to go back to their different states. Then the governor will decide will know whether he can pay this or not. Because what the federal government agreed now is what they can pay.
Yes.
Federal government cannot tell maybe on those states or your state, you must pay 65,000. Or your state will pay depending on their revenue. Understand me? So this negotiation is not ending at the center. They must still go to the states
to complete it. Also, do you have, and I know you've just said what you've just said about the states, but do you have a specific figure in mind, just as Mr. Fanima has mentioned his?
All the states are not equal in revenue.
So it still goes back.
So what Lagos can pay, Kebbi State cannot pay it. What Rivers can pay, Gombe State cannot pay it. Understand me? So there can never be uniform minimum
wage. Okay, thank you so much. A former treasurer of the Nigerian Labour Congress and current chairman of the Medical and Health Workers Union of Nigeria, Bangboshe Betty, has said that in a bid for the Senate to understand the plight of the labor unions, they should put their salaries on the minimum wage. Now, this might be a dicey subject, but you would understand where this is coming from the fact that a senator's basic salary is already over 2 million naira, and that is aside hardship allowance, wardrobe allowance, recess allowance, and all the other multiple allowances that come along with being a senator, being the basic senator, and how much that they earn on a basic salary. So my question is, how is this considerate? How is this considerate? And you will understand where the hardship of the people are coming from and where their concern about this increment in the minimum wage is stemming from. How is this considerate when a public service worker, a public service official, so to speak, earns over 2 million naira, aside all the other millions that the other allowances amount to, and an average worker cannot even earn up to 70,000 naira. Now, I'm coming to you on this one, Mr. Fanimo. What is your take on this, given the fact that senators' salaries already are so heavy?
You see, let's approach it with this analogy. When the colonial masters, when they came, why did they choose to pay somebody in the office a higher salary to the laborer on the field? It's just that we have an aberration in this country. Legislators are supposed to work around the clock. The way legislation is designed in Senate climes. When we fashioned our democracy after the presidential system of government in America, the expectation was that the legislators at the federal level and at the state level, they are supposed to have people working for them. They are supposed to have researchers and all that. But what we have in this country, they pocket all this money and maybe just bring 2 or 3 people that are their siblings or their cousins to Abuja, and they don't even have constituency office in their various constituencies. So that's why people are clamoring that they should be earning the same wage as the civil servants. These are public officials, and their salaries have been fixed not by themselves but by Salaries and Wages Commission. So you can't expect a legislator to earn the same salary as a level 8 officer. That's not possible.
There's no argument there, Mr. Fanimo. There's no argument there. As understandable as
you can't say there is no argument.
No, there is no argument there. Now, the people that are talking about defunding the legislature, they're talking about reducing salaries and talking about how those seats, those public offices and the positions seem so attractive because of how much they earn, and they're not out of turn when they speak that way. And then the reason I say this is because with all these amounts allotted to these people, I'm not saying that they should earn what an average worker earns, but the distance between what an average, and when I say an average worker, I'm talking about the minimum wage that's coming from 30,000 and going up to this current negotiations that's going up to 60 and above. And we don't even know where that's ending. But the truth of the matter is there is a wide gap, a massive gap. So nobody is saying they should earn what an average worker or an average laborer on the street earns.
You see,
but significantly, do you not think that gap is unthinkable?
Let me quickly say this. Let me quickly say this. You shouldn't have said this argument is not tenable. You are supposed to be an umpire.
I didn't say it's not tenable. I said there is no argument there. That's what I said.
There should be. That's why we are here to ventilate our opinion. And it's not sacrosanct. But what I'm telling you is, do you know today in the Federal Civil Service, a permanent secretary earns about 2 million naira a month?
I do.
Good. Now what we are saying is remove corruption from what these people are taking home. You will understand that the salary of a legislator at the federal level is just a little bit higher than that of a permanent secretary. But it's only when you now begin to add this constituency allowance, which was created by Obasanjo for no reason at all. Because if you have agencies of government, MDAs, that are supposed to take care of certain things in the polity, why should you start do a legislator is supposed to make laws with constituency allowance to get about 500 million naira a year and decide what he wants to use it for? So you won't blame the system, but to blame those operating the system that have opened up taps for corruptive tendencies. Given the fact that, go and look at Revenue and Wages Commission salary scale, you will see that it is only when you now begin to have this oversight function allowance, constituency allowance, PA, telephone allowance, a newspaper allowance, magazine allowance. That's why it adds up to all these things we are talking about. We should be talking about the wage, not the perks. Do you know how many other things that accrue to the permanent secretary in these various ministries that are not listed as their wage?
All right, Mr. Fanimo.
We don't know.
Thank you very much. Let me hear from Mr. Anosike on this. And you've heard what he has said. And I need to know what your feedback is concerning that. And if you also look at it from the budget that has been allocated to the House of Reps as well as what the minimum wage used to be and where we are now, the bigger picture is my concern.
For me, getting into a public office in Nigeria is the most expensive in the world. Understand me? So the gap should be very, very high. If not, let that man that made this statement go and run for the office of the Senate. For Lagos State, as an example, you cannot run for a Senate with less than 1 billion naira. Understand me? So if they make it now, do you know that after Trump conviction, America has given him $38 million within 6 hours. Today it's over 200 and something million. Understand me? How much has Nigerians given to a senator? Understand me? So for me, that guy is a childish argument. The civil servants and the senators are not doing the same kind of work. How much does it take to join the civil servants? How much does it take that to join the civil service? How much does it take to become a senator? Let us start that argument from there.
So you're saying that the gap is justifiable?
The gap is very, very justifiable. We should be realistic.
Okay. I'm going to quickly go to something that was said by the Special Advisor on Information and Strategy to President Tinubu as regards the ongoing strike led by the organized labor. So he's saying, and this is Bayo Onanuga speaking, he's saying that the strike is causing further harm to the very Nigerians that they claim to represent. He said that members of the NLC and members of the TUC are aligned with the opposition party, that's the Labour Party, suggesting that they inherently harbor animosity. They do not like the current operations of the Tinubu administration. So my question now at this point is, he said something about blackmail. Yes, he said otherwise the issue they claim to be fighting for cannot be resolved by blackmail or sabotage, that they have to sit and return to the negotiating table. Now, would you call these strike actions by the organized labor blackmail or sabotage? Because those are very, very tricky words. Or playing politics, as he said. Would you call it that? That's one part of the question, Mr. Fanimo. And the part B of the question is, do you think that members of the NLC and TUC, whether or not they're supporters of the LP, which is his assertion, and even if they are, is a reason why they're going on strike and they're not backing down on the subject of the minimum wage? Now, just to preface the question I just asked, Labour Party today called on the federal government and the organized labor to return to the negotiating table and reach a reasonable offer. Now, for a party who is saying, oh, I don't think this strike is necessary, or whether necessary or not, we need you to return to the table. Will you say that this party or members of this party, if they are NLC and TUC members, are justifying why they're going on strike because they're members of this party, or it's just plain politics, as Bayo Onanuga has said? I want to quickly know your thoughts on that.
For me, Bayo Onanuga is just doing his job the way he should do it. If I were to be in his position, or my friend there, Peter, he will also do the same thing. You see, as a matter of fact, Ajero also sold himself away at a point. He couldn't demarcate the thin line between the trade union and the political party. NLC is a trade union.
Yes.
Labour Party is a political party. Regardless of the fact that NLC and TUC were instrumental to forming Labour Party. But at a point, you should be able to know that you are carrying two different brands, and they shouldn't come together at the same time. Ejiro at a point immersed himself in politics such that it was difficult to really see him as NLC president. So if Bayo Onanuga is now coming up today to say that Ajero is partisan and that he is playing politics with the NLC strike, he is justifiable, and that statement is justified as far as I'm concerned. That's why if Ajero should continue as president of NLC, he should as much as possible divorce himself from the internal politics of Labour Party. He should try as much as possible to insulate himself from Labour Party and whatever is going on in the Labour Party, at least in the open.
Okay.
That's my take.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fanimo. He's not actually the only person that has said it. Bayo Onanuga is not the only person who has said this. PDP chieftain Reno Omokri, who has said so many things in times past, has said also that the NLC and the TUC are fighting a proxy war for Peter Obi, saying that they have a political objective. Now, again, I'm coming back to you with the same question. Is there any merit to what both Reno has said, Reno Omokri, and what Bayo Onanuga has said? I mean, Mr. Fanimo seems to think that he's just doing his job as special advisor.
Well, I want to respond to what Bayo Onanuga said. He said that the strike is harming the masses. Understand me?
Yes.
If you are sick, you take drugs. Most drugs are bitter. But after the bitterness, the body will be healed, isn't it?
True.
And there's also a saying that if you want peace, first of all, go for war. So NLC and TUC know that this strike is going to discomfort some people. It's already known. So it's not strange. Understand me? So, but, and again, they have been negotiating this minimum wage. It didn't start today. No. They held a meeting yesterday evening. It ended in a deadlock. So, what they are doing is not new, and the effect is not new. But as a spokesman of the president, he's not supposed to keep his mouth shut. He must say something, and that's what he is doing. That's where his salary comes. Understand me? So he is justifying the salary that he's taking.
How about the assertion of Reno Omokri talking about?
I don't want to.
This why do you not want to talk about that?
He's a tout.
So you think everything he's saying is baseless?
He's a tout. He's a tout.
Okay, that's a very heavy assertion. But I'm coming back to you on that one. On the same assertion by Reno Omokri, talking about this being a proxy war. Again, we've talked about Labour Party and how the role the NLC and TUC had to play in the origin of the Labour Party. But being that Peter Obi was the presidential flag bearer in 2023, what does this have to do with Reno talking about fighting a proxy war for Peter Obi and saying that the NLC and TUC have a political objective? Is there any merit to this coming from your end, in your perspective? Mr. Fanmo.
Okay. You see, as far as I'm concerned, I don't even see a proxy war in this. Because even if NLC grounds this country today and everything is shut down, there is no way anybody would remove Tinubu and come and put Obi in Aso Rock. So whatever they are doing now, even if it is true, it's just a game towards 2027. And 2027 is still about 3 years away from now. So I don't believe that. NLC, TUC, they have every reason to justify asking for minimum wage. From the point of law, when that 30,000 minimum wage was arrived at in 2019, yes, it was for a 5-year period. And so by now, NST and TUC, they are justified to ask for new pay. 2, the current economic reality suggests that 30,000 naira cannot take anybody anywhere, and so there must be new negotiation. So anything aside from that is just trying to label NLC and TUC. I'm looking at NLC and TUC as a body now, not as the leadership or the individuals that are in NLC and TUC.
Of course.
So Reno may have his own opinion, but as far as I'm concerned, it is even too early to fight any battle for Obi or whoever is concerned.
Okay.
But the reality on ground is that Nigerians are suffering, and particularly workers are suffering. If you continue to pay 30,000 naira, then you are inviting massive corruption. You will be shocked that people will now begin to take away fittings in offices to sell, to survive.
Thank you very much.
If it continues like this.
Absolutely. Perfectly understood. My follow-up question to that, coming from the fact that some people are saying, some people like Reno are saying this is politically motivated, and maybe there is no point to that. And to him, of course, there is. But from a political perspective, my question to you, Mr. Anosike, would be, how would you assess the effectiveness of the way the government is currently handling the negotiations between them and the organized labor?
Well, government is handling it well, and TUC and NLC is also handling it well. Understand me? Okay. Negotiation, you must disagree to agree. Understand me? So government is coming down, NLC, TUC is going up. That's how it is done. At the end of the day, they will meet at a point.
Yes.
Understand me? So government, you don't agree wholeheartedly in a negotiation. Understand me? Then the TUC, NLC will keep on pushing. Then government will keep on reducing until to the point that they can afford. Understand me? You cannot agree to what you cannot pay, even at gunpoint. So we should also know what government is funding. Because when I was doing a radio program in the afternoon, I said that government cannot pay 400 and something thousand. The economists were saying that government can pay, that there's money. There will be no money, and government is borrowing. Understand me? Where is the money coming? Understand me? So neighbors should be realistic. They should think of the payer, the affordability of that wages that they are talking about. It is important.
Absolutely. I'll take that as your final thoughts on this one, so I can come to Mr. Fanimo. Same question applies to you. How would you assess the effectiveness of how the government is handling the negotiations and even the strike action? Let me take your response to that very briefly.
On the government side, I see maturity. On the labor side, I see a different ball game from what used to be. It was before now a contest, a competition. But I think now that we now have graduates in the saddle, in the two labor centers, in the leadership of these two labor centers, now we are beginning to see reason. We are beginning to see intellectual arguments rather than we no go agree. And it is good for democracy. It is also good for Nigeria.
Thank you so much, Mr. Fanimo. Today's session has been definitely informative. But of course, as the conversations concerning the negotiation of the minimum wage progresses, we will bring you updates as we go. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you very much, Mr. Fanimo, for joining us.
Always my pleasure. Good night.
Good night, and thank you to you, Mr. Anosike.
Yeah, thank you too. This is Mr. Fanimo's tough. He's a guru in the labor sector. It has buttered his bread for a very long time.
Interesting. Thank you so much once again. As we conclude today's political roundup, thank you for joining us, and catch me again tomorrow at this time on YouTube channel, The Voice of the People Television. Stay connected with us across all our social media platforms. My name is Sumto Ajama. Good evening.